So we're absolutely delighted to welcome to Tackling Sport the Ireland cricket men's captain, Andy Balbirnie. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for joining us. So first of all, you're in isolation after coming back from a fairly successful tour to the UK.
Yeah, we knew that it was something that we might have to do when we first went on the tour. I think it had been put to government by Cricket Ireland about the situation that we'd be in over there, obviously in this sort of biosecure bubble and being tested on a regular basis. But for whatever reason, they kind of passed up on it, and we weren't able to kind of get out and about and see a few people and familiar faces, which is a shame. But I suppose that's the sort of time we're living in.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously the isolation's been made a little bit sweeter by a fantastic win in the third one-day international. For those maybe who weren't aware, we lost the first two kind of a little bit convincingly, although there was a bit of fight shown. There was some promise from young Curtis Camper. But tell us, how relieved were you in that third game to even just put in a performance and showcase our talent?
Yeah, because when our kind of schedule was ripped up at the start of the summer, and we knew that we wouldn't have any international cricket, if any. So we were very pleased to be, invited over to play our 3 games against England, and you're obviously anxious to get going. And whether there was a bit of rustiness in the first 2 games, having not played any cricket at all throughout the summer, you can obviously we netted a lot in the lead up to it, but there's no sort of, you can't replicate being out in the middle and facing that contest in the middle of a game. So I don't know whether the first 2 games we were just a bit rusty and struggled to find a bit of rhythm with the bat. But certainly batting first in 2 games, batting first, not posting a good enough score is disappointing. But the way that we came out in the third game, and I suppose you don't really have an option when you're chasing 330, you have to really go for it. And we were able to set up some sort of a platform and then kind of just see it home bit by bit.
You talked about the biosecure bubble. It's a young Irish team. You're relatively new to captaincy. Did you find that time with the squad, with the lads, quite beneficial for longer term and trying to implement your plans into the side?
Yeah, I think so. I think being an international cricketer, you do spend a lot of time away from home, and you do spend a lot of time with these people. We don't have a huge kind of pool of players who come in and out of squads. By and large, it's usually the same sort of personalities that are in the squad, so we know each other pretty well. It was obviously a good time to get to know each other even better, because we'd obviously spent a lot of time apart this summer. You mentioned Curtis Camphor, someone like that coming into the squad, having not really got to know any of the guys. It was good that he kind of got in and involved, and he came in and put in performances that backed up his selection, and it was great to see how he went about his business. But look, it's a bio bubble, but it's a luxurious hotel with cricket grounds at our doorstep. So it's not the worst place to be in the world. There's an 18-hole golf course as well. So, we were very well looked after. So we've definitely been to worse places in the world.
Yeah, and you spoke there just about your own. How relieved were you? Well, not relieved, but how important did you find that knock? And obviously, once you're in a partnership with Paul Sterling, the two of you are very close friends. How did you find that? And the captain and the vice captain leading from the front is very important.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just the fact that we're captain and vice captain. We're the now senior batters in the team. He's the opener and I'm the number 3, and we both failed in the first 2 ODIs, and he was over in my room most nights, and we were chatting and chatting about the game itself, but also chatting about our own form. And it's very easy to get kind of bogged down about how your own form is, but you're only ever a score away from being back in form. That's the beauty of cricket. So we knew that the wicket was going to be pretty good, so we just had to give ourselves a chance, and we both managed to do that. And I think it was important that once we both got in, we both kicked on and pushed on and got hundreds. Years gone by, it would have been nice. People would have been happy with just getting a 50 and potentially losing by a 50 run. So we wanted to make sure that one of us was there at the end. I know we weren't, but I suppose it was a fitting way to finish with the fact that we had our, youngest player in the squad and our oldest player in the squad there at the end.
And just talk maybe a little bit about your career. So you grew up right beside Pembroke Cricket Club. I know your mum and dad were quite involved in the club. Is that something you were just born into?
Sorry, I just missed that.
Okay. So you talked there about just to talk about the start of your career. You were born near a cricket club. Your parents were kind of involved, and is that you were just born into it, really?
Yeah, look, I spent the first few years of my life growing up in the UK in a place called Marlow. My dad used to take me down to the cricket grounds there. Now I was young, so I wasn't playing. But then when we moved back to like a permanent house in Dublin, we moved into Sandymount, and we were about 50 yards from Pembroke Cricket Club where I grew up. And I suppose like any young kid at the time, just spent hours and down at the cricket club wanting to play with the older guys and hanging around. Hopefully someone would get injured and you could field for the day, that sort of stuff. And it's just all I wanted to do from that young age. And I went to a school that played it in the summer. So that obviously helped. But yeah, look, when I was 8 or 9, that's all I did in the summer was go down and spend my hours and days in the cricket ground.
So when you were growing up, you were looking at the likes of Ed Joyce and Niall O'Brien making careers for themselves over in England. When did that become a decision to, I'm going to go and I'm going to play for Middlesex?
I think I first went over maybe when I was 14 or 15. I actually went to Warwickshire for 2 or 3 days. Did some training with their academy, and then nothing really came of it. Peter Davey, who was the international at my club when I grew up, him and his brother were the only internationals at the time. He had a contact in Middlesex, and he obviously recommended me when I was about 16. I never really thought about going over to play in England, probably until I was about a teenager. I always wanted to be Owen Morgan, I think, when I was a kid, because he was the guy who was 4 or 5 years older than me and was obviously scoring loads of runs for Ireland and then going over to England. I don't think not until I was maybe 19 or 20 when I was on the young cricketers at Lords did I probably properly think that I want to do this for a living. There wasn't a lot of contracts available in Ireland, so the only way to do it was go to England. So I think 18, 19 was probably when I first thought that I could do this for a living.
And then you start getting into second team cricket and trying to push in and make headway through the Middlesex setup. What's second team cricket like? You kind of hear a bit. Maybe it's not the standard of first team cricket, but you still learn an awful lot from there.
Yeah, you do, and there are teams that don't have bigger squads, so their second teams will mostly be made up of kind of under 19s or under 17s. But there'll be other times that you play some of the big counties who've got maybe 23 contracted players, so they'd be very competitive games. But I think the best thing for rather than the games themselves was actually getting to play with some experienced county cricketers and experienced international cricketers, and even just being around that environment. Whether it was 12th manning at Lords for the first team, and getting to sit down beside Andrew Strauss or Owen Morgan or Steve Finn or Chris Rogers, these guys, and just kind of listen to them and see how they go about their business. Naturally, playing a lot of second team cricket, your game does improve because you're playing 4 days a week, and you get, you're brought up over in Ireland. You're obviously brought up in 1 day cricket, so I was never really exposed to multi-day cricket. So going over to county cricket was the first time that I could play that at a more regular basis. So that naturally kind of helped me in my way of going about batting, setting up an innings and that sort of stuff, and batting for long periods. So look, I loved my time at Middlesex. I didn't play a lot of first team at all, but I certainly wouldn't have changed it the way I got to learn and play with some of the best.
And then you spoke there, you made your debut for Ireland at 20. So at the age of 20, 21, you've got this big kind of career ahead of you. You didn't necessarily kick on straight away. There was also move on 5 years. In 2016, you had a horrendous hip injury. And I remember I was doing a bit of work with Cricket Ireland at the time. We were doing the live stream, and you were around a lot commentating. I couldn't get over, despite how at such a important stage of your career, where you're at the age where you need to kick on and become a fully grown international, you had a horrendous hip injury, yet you still had the positive outlook. How difficult was that stage of your career?
Yeah, it was difficult, but I think I had good people around me at the time, and I had a pretty good plan set out from the off. I knew it was a surgery that I had to get done. So once I knew that, and once I had a kind of the hip surgeon tell me that, I think that's when I was like, right, you need to do this. So once that decision was made, I was able to make a plan, and the plan was to take the summer off. I wasn't going to be able to play, and then to go to Sydney in September with Ram McPeterson and play for 3 months there and sort of build my fitness back up. So the way it panned out, it worked perfectly. I said to myself that I wasn't going to play until 2017, and I think once I kind of got my head around that, I was able to focus on what I needed to do to get my rehab done and make sure that I came back a better player, because we obviously had a relatively new coach in John Bracewell who maybe didn't know a lot about me. So I kind of needed to just focus on myself and get myself back to a place where I needed to perform, because I think leading up to that injury, post 2015 World Cup, I had hit a bit of a slump, and I was maybe I maybe took my place for granted, I think. I got comfortable in my position because I'd done okay in the World Cup, and then I thought, I've made it now and I've accomplished what I've wanted to accomplish. So I think that injury was a bit of a kick in the arse for me, to say, you're a long way off from where you should be. So get your arse in gear and get back to where you want to be.
Just a point on that. A lot of professional athletes would have the same kind of, once they make it, it's hard to, like you said, you kind of fall into those bad habits, and you were kind of almost lucky in a way that injury came at the right time, I guess.
Yeah, it's spot on. That's exactly right. I mean, I got so anxious and worked so hard to get into the Irish team, and that was probably why I failed for the first 15 or 20 times playing for Ireland, because I was so worked up and got really, got anxiety about performing for Ireland, and that just made me freeze when I got out there. Then I had a bit of a moment where I cracked it and I got runs, and I went on a run of getting runs, and then I'd reached the peak, I think, and I was like, right, I'm happy days, I'm here now, enjoy it, score a few runs here and there. And and that's the beauty of international sport. It can, at the start of 2015, I was playing in a World Cup in front of a packed house. Come the end of 2015, we were playing a 4-day game against Namibia, and I was dropped. And it was the first time I was dropped that year, and that sort of coincided with my injury. I wasn't in the team in the lead up to my surgery, but like you said, that as injuries go, it was the perfect timing. It was, like I said, it was the kick up the arse I needed, and the sort of eureka moment that you need to pull your finger out here and focus on trying to be the best you can be, rather than just getting to a point so that you can be comfortable at it.
How did you take getting dropped for that game in Namibia?
Yeah, I didn't take it well. I took it like any sort of 24, 25-year-old pretty immature bloke did. I think I went out in the piss that night in Namibia, found a bar in Namibia somehow, with a couple of the lads who weren't playing as well. And look, it wasn't great, but I was really angry because I still felt that I should have been in the team, but I definitely wasn't playing good enough cricket to be in the team. We were in Zimbabwe previously, on an A-team tour. No, we played their A-team, and Stuart Pointer got 100, and we were sort of going for the same position, so completely deserved to be in the team. But it was still a bit of a probably knock of my confidence, and my knocked me off my perch a bit. But like I said, like that all happened. That needed to happen, and it did happen. It was certainly the right thing at the time.
So then when you're rehabbing from the injury and you're coming back into a side that at the time you were kind of coming towards the end of, say, the careers of Niall O'Brien and Ed Joyce and great servants to Irish cricket, and the team it's a phrase commonly used, but it was kind of at a crossroads where, young blood was being put in, and everyone had looked at you, Andy, as someone that, had been at Middlesex for quite a while and could kick on to become an international cricketer. Did you have pressure during your rehab to come back and come back better than ever?
I think there was a pressure on myself. I didn't think there was a pressure from outside. John Bracewell was very good in that regard. He met me probably once a month just to check in and see how I was, without kind of saying, look, we need you back, because I knew that once I was back fit again, I needed to kind of work hard to get back into the team and warrant a place, not just, you're back now, get in and bat number 3 or 4, because there were still good players around. Like you said there, I was lucky to play with Ed and Niall and even William and Kev, like legends of Irish cricket, and there was competition for places. So I knew that when I got back, I almost had to just get my head down and think about myself and try to work as hard as I can to get back into the team. And I think I managed to do that in Noida to play Afghanistan. I wasn't originally in the squad. I got picked, got some runs, and that sort of started a bit of a run for me, and I was able to kind of kick on from there.
You spoke a little bit about when you're getting back. Did you have to work a little bit harder in terms of you'd obviously had the great form, you'd had the dip, and it's not a case of just flicking the switch and it works again. So did you work extra hard on your game, or what kind of stuff did you put in place to make sure you were back and flying in the same form, if not better?
Yeah, I mean, I did work hard. I worked hard when I was in Sydney. I think I found out more about my game in Sydney. I found out what I could and couldn't do and what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. Whereas before, I think I might have just thought I was a brilliant player and I could do everything, but that just wasn't the case. So I was able to go away from the kind of Irish cricket spotlight and just play club cricket in Sydney, where no one really gave a shit who you were and who you are. And I was able to just focus on the basics and what I'm good at, and make sure that whatever I'm good at, that I'm really good at, and improve on the bad things bit by bit. But I wouldn't say I was like doing loads of fitness and that sort of stuff like I was, but I was doing fitness, but I wasn't like working my absolute nut off. I was just focusing on my batting and how I could get the best out of my batting, because I wasn't the best batter in the country. I was someone who was limited, but I didn't maybe know I was limited. So that kind of time on my own in Australia certainly kind of was a bit of a learning curve for me, and something that was the perfect timing for me.
You spoke there about a few tours against Afghanistan. It's a team we played a lot. What have you picked up and learned from those tours, especially when you're coming up against a world-class bowling and especially a spin attack in Rashid Khan, Mohammad Nabi and Mujib in recent years? When you're in the midst of a tour and you might struggle in the first game, how hard do you work at trying to combat and try and score runs against them?
Yeah, it's that was probably my first tour back. I sort of say my second coming in the Irish team. That was my first tour back, and I'd heard about Rashid and I'd heard about their spin options, and that was kind of a strange tour because I was only picked for the ODIs and I got some runs in the ODIs, and then they drafted me into the 4-day team, and then I got runs there. So I don't know, I was playing with a bit of freedom because I knew that I had no baggage really, because I hadn't played for a year. So I didn't think too much about it. I just sort of played the situation as it was. And I think the main thing whenever I come up against those sort of guys is play with a clear head, because there's so much going on when those guys are bowling. You've got noise all around the bat. If you just go out there and try to mute it, I know you can't really do that, but just kind of focus on where's the gap, where am I going to score here, or watch his hand so you can maybe pick his googly, that sort of stuff. So I found it quite, I wouldn't say easy, but I didn't find it as difficult as maybe I thought going in. For me, the worst place for me to be is in the dugout waiting to bat. That's probably my least favorite place in the world, including everything. I just hate waiting to bat. There's something about it. I get so nervous. Like, I don't want to be there. I just like biting all my nails. And then when I'm out there, like, I have a clear head and I'm not worried at all. So actually being out in the moment and playing is when I'm at my sort of happiest, I suppose.
Just to pick up on that, I would have thought that obviously you're nervous going in, but it's something that you want to be there. I know when I play sport, just before that ball gets thrown in or whatever, I'm quite excited, and even in the build up to it, but you find it, is that something that you're still working on, that when you're in that dugout? I suppose it's a little bit different in cricket in the sense that the game's going on and you're waiting to bat, for example, at number 3.
Yeah, I get so nervous waiting to bat. Like, I really do. It's like I'm almost like a different person. It is bizarre, but the minute I'm kind of, I'm in, or there's a wicket and I put my gloves on, I'm in, so like I'm ready to go. But I think that's probably what gets me going a bit, because remember Ed Joyce used to say, like, the day he stops getting nervous is the day he's finished, because that's the reason you play. You play for the big moments, and you want to be nervous because it means something to you. It's what you do. It's your job. It's what you wanted to do all your life. So, so yeah, look, I'm always going to be nervous. I don't think that's ever going to change. Like, if you'd seen me in the dressing room after I got out last week against England, like, just, lads, I'm surprised I didn't get a dig. Like, I was just so anxious and nervous, because it just means so much, and it means everything to me.
You kind of spoke there about having kind of 2 spells with Ireland, and it kind of coincided with John Bracewell leaving and Graham Ford coming in as Ireland coach. And I've known Kevin Peterson has spoken extremely highly of Graham Ford in the past, calling him his mentor or whatever. How important has Graham Ford been on your game? Even if you just look at some of the stats in and around since he's been involved, the big hundreds in against Afghanistan, now against England, you just seem like a more complete player under Graham.
Yeah, I feel like I'm quite lucky, because when I talk about my 2 sort of spells with Ireland, if you like, I think it was certainly sort of pre-2015 World Cup, where I maybe played 25 games without scoring a run. and then sort of and then to when I got injured. So 2015, I'd done okay, but certainly since I've come back from injury, is when I've been sort of at my most consistent, even more so in the last couple of years. John Bracewell and Graham Ford are both coaches that I feel very fortunate to have worked with. From a sort of early 2017, I remember John telling me that, I'm going to be the number 3, whether it's this year or the next year. And I sort of was able to get my head around that. And I never actually liked batting 3, just because I didn't like having the pads on first and not being out there. But now, like, it's, I wouldn't want to bat anywhere else. And then I suppose since Graham's come in, Graham's very unique. He's obviously, in my opinion, one of the best coaches in the world. He nails down the basics, and that's something that I need to keep reiterating to myself, because sometimes you can get a bit carried away. If you get 100 and then the next day you're going out for a net and you're playing all these expansive shots as if you're still on 100, they'll be straight down to you and be like, "What are you doing? Like, get your head in the right positions. Your feet aren't moving well." And just he's always there, and he's always on the phone as well. You can always give him a shout and just chat to him. He loves cricket. He eats and sleeps it. So he's just a good man, just a really good man to have and he's here at a perfect time for us, where we need that sort of top coach to help us take this squad forward.
Absolutely, I agree entirely with that. And just bring into another moment, maybe just even before the real renaissance in your game, the first Test match, which is such a historic occasion. It's something that, everyone in Irish cricket would say they were there. There was a huge crowd at it, and all the build up to it. And it didn't go incredibly well for you personally, or maybe that's an understatement. But how do you feel after the Test? And we've ran Pakistan so close. It's been this big build up, and then you're sitting there without a run. Just did those old doubts start coming back into your head?
They actually didn't. Funnily enough, there's no doubt that you could have looked at that and go, "Oh no, like he's gonna go through this rut." But because I had played quite well in the lead up to the game, I think I'd scored a couple of hundreds in the build up, and I was in great form, and I felt really good. And I suppose that's Test cricket. It doesn't actually take into account your form, because you're going out there against the best players in the world. And it was a huge disappointment. Don't get me wrong. Like, for 2 days after that, you wouldn't have come up and talked to me. Like, I was just in a terrible mood. But I think on the 3rd day, 40 texted me saying, "Come on, let's go for a hit." And, I was in the nets that afternoon, and we had T20 games coming up, so I was practicing for that. The one frustrating thing was that we didn't have another Test till February or March. So that was 7 or 8 months, which was really annoying, because, you've had a Test match. It's been a great occasion, but you've failed with the bat. You don't get a chance to redeem yourself. So I was 8 or 9 months thinking about, how am I going to get off the mark in Test cricket? But certainly having 40 around helped me in that situation.
And that's probably one of the tours that, to a lot of Irish cricket fans, has saluted you. And that's when they went, right, he's our number 3. There's absolutely no denying it. You scored a big 100 in the one day, I think, against Afghanistan, and you also got 80 in the Test. And how, like, when you're playing against Rashid Khan and white ball, and then you move to red ball, how different is that switch? I know you spoke there about playing them in a 4-day game, but in a Test match, and you've come in and you still haven't scored an international run. Were you just thinking about getting off the mark, or were you thinking about trying to hit a big score?
Yeah, first innings, I was, selfishly, that's all I was thinking about, was getting off the mark. And, I can't change that. And that's just the way my head was at. I was, waiting so long, and, that's not the way it should be, but it was just the way I was thinking. And I think I got 4 or 5 in that first innings. But second innings was certainly probably one of the more disappointing. I know I got 80, but I really felt that, I could have got a big 100 that day. I was hitting them as well as I had been. I was picking about all their spinners. And I really had set myself up to get a big 100 and potentially put us in a winning position. It wasn't to be. It was a great experience to play a Test match in the subcontinent against those sort of guys, and they're good competitors. I mean, Rashid Khan is, he's a competitor on the pitch, but off the pitch he's very humble, and he's always there if you want to kind of ask him something or talk to him about the game. Look, we're going to come up against him for a long time to come, and we're starting to play him better as the years have gone on. We've seen a lot more of him on the TV and around the leagues, and but in terms of white ball to red ball, I think his threat is white ball, because you've got to score off him, whereas in red ball you can kind of set up and look to bat for as long as possible, and maybe pick them a bit easier than you would in the white ball.
And then moving on to last summer, and I think it was probably for a couple of hours, it was Dreamland there on day one at Lords, and Tim Marta's coming in from the nursery end, and he's getting them all out. What's that like as a player when you're watching that, and in the first hour and 40 minutes and bowling them out before lunch? Is that just like all your dreams at once coming true, and edges are flying to you at slip? And
yeah, it was surreal. I think I had my sunglasses on walking out the long room, but there was certainly, a tear in my eye, and I wouldn't say I was the only one. It was, usually when you play red ball cricket, the first session can sometimes be long, especially when you don't play a lot of first class cricket like us. But that session just went so quickly. It was bizarre. I remember just sitting in the change room at lunch going, having to peek my head out the window just to double check that the scoreboard was right. And it was just unique, and it was fitting that it was Tim's last game for Ireland. He had done so much for that team over the number of years that he played with us, and that was just one of the all-time great test spells, and it was just brilliant to be out there and a part of it with him.
And for someone like Tim, he was actually unlucky to miss the World Cup in 2015. He was a huge part of. He took 4 against England in a home game in Malahide. Someone like that, and this is the big issue now for Irish cricket. We've lost Tim. That Stuart Pointer. They're going to stay with their counties, and Tim's going to see out his county career at Middlesex. How big an issue is that? Look, we're losing the development that you got, say for example at Middlesex at county level, the likes of Kevin O'Brien who played a lot of county cricket. How difficult is that now to bridge the gap from our own interprovincial structure to from the ground and you would have got at county level?
Yeah, I always, I've said it before that county cricket was the making of me, and that's where I learned my game and learned my trade. And I was very fortunate that I was probably of the last crop of players that got to experience that. I've no doubt that Irish team leading up to 2015 was so successful because there were so many players playing regular first class cricket in England. We're certainly at a different stage now where that's just not available. And look, I won't lie, I was slightly worried when county cricket was taken away. I was worried about the younger guys who weren't maybe going to be exposed to a high class level leading into international cricket. But then performances like last week, performances like in the Caribbean, in Afghanistan, or in India in March, they kind of just put that to one side because it shows that we're doing something right in our own system. If you look at our team last week, I don't know what the average age was, but you had Harry Tector, Gareth Delaney, Tucker, Little. I know Camphor didn't come through the system, but he's young. And like Craig Young as well. These guys, didn't have county cricket, so they came through our system and they were doing it on that stage against the best team in the world. So we're obviously doing something right. It's just doing it over a longer period of time and making sure that the players that are sort of pigeonholed, they get as much experience at the international level from an early age as possible. So we can blood them in like that. But it was certainly this year has really showed that whatever we're doing in our own system and Interpro level, and as importantly at Wolves level, because I strongly think that we need to be playing as much Wolves cricket as possible, because that is the big bridging, the big bridge between international cricket and the Interpros is guys going to India or Sri Lanka and playing against the A teams there and getting exposed to that sort of level before they get back to play for the international team. So look, I needed county cricket. I think my game needed county cricket. I needed the games and games of cricket, whereas there's not many games here, but we certainly have the talent pool to have a successful few years.
How are you finding captaining this young side? It's something that when you're captain an international team, you are lucky to still have the likes of William Porterfield, Boyd Rankin, Gary Wilson there, that experience. But how exciting is it to be leading the next generation of Irish players?
It's very exciting. I mean, if you sit and watch them in the nets and you see how far some of these kids hit the ball, it's scary. Like, it really is. It's a part of my game that I don't have, but I'm really in awe of the way they go about their training sessions, and it is really refreshing. Even our fielding drills at training are high intensity. Not to say they weren't, but these guys are coming in with this kind of quick and fresh look at things, and they have no fear. And that's what you need at this level, because like I said, they're not exposed to this level in the lead up to it. So once they come out into that arena, they're basically, it's sink or swim. And these guys are doing so well, and they're training the house down, and they're doing all the right things. And now they're starting to put in performances. And it's going to be tough. Like, we're going to have tough days. There's no doubt about that. And these guys are going to go through a bad run of form, but we've got to persevere with them and make sure that the support is there, so that they will win games of cricket for Ireland, most of them. So we've just got to make sure that we nurture them and get the best out of them.
The more opportunity, even in some of the series we played, maybe in the first game or the second game, like in England last week, we weren't great, and then the third game we're getting up to the level that's required. Even the Caribbean, and you're seeing the likes of Gareth Delaney and him showcasing his talent to around the world. Like, that's I suppose what we've been crying out for as fixtures. We're starting to get them, but we could still do it a lot more.
Yeah, we could, and this pandemic hasn't helped, but it hasn't helped a lot of sports, and we've been lucky to be able to play some cricket through it. That is the frustration, sort of going back to the test match, having that one test and not having a great game. You want to get more of it straight away, and we had that last game last Tuesday, and everyone's on a buzz and you want to play again, but we might not necessarily play till January, and that is frustrating, but that's the way it is. Luckily we do have a path to qualify for the World Cup, and we know what we need to do for that. And we're going to have a lot of cricket at some stage over the next 2 or 3 years. We're going to have a lot of cricket back to back. So we've got to make sure that we have a squad of players, 18, 19 players who are ready to come into the team whenever available to win games.
You were lucky enough to play the World Cup in 2015 and Ireland winning 3 games there. How important is it for Irish cricket to qualify for the next World Cup? And we've got 2 chances with the Super League that's running, and we had a great win against England, which gives us 10 points in it. But how important is it that we don't miss another one? And I know we're up against it with it only being a 10-team tournament.
It's very important that we qualify for from a financial point of view. Obviously, the Future Tours program, post that World Cup and the fixtures that come with that have a huge bearing. But just for this group of players, I think come 2023, we're going to have a really good, strong core of players who potentially could lead the team forward after 2023 and beyond. So, look, like you said, I've played in the World Cup, and it was the best experience of my life as a cricketer to date. 6 weeks in Australia playing in front of full crowds, some of the games was just an amazing experience, having friends and family there. Unfortunately, we were meant to go there in October for that, but that's not the case. It's put back to next year, but hopefully those guys can experience that. And again, it's just that experience and being exposed to that level and the stuff that it can do to a player. And that's, it's exciting to see what we have coming up.
Like I've heard like other captains in like 4-year cycles in other sports as well, where they're building up to the World Cup. I guess you have to balance, because we have a really tough qualifying structure, that you have to balance the short term in the sense winning games for the long term. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you had 4 years to build up the World Cup, you could just play a lot of young players and really work with them, where you've got to get that balance right. How are you finding that, and what's the plan or strategy around that in terms of finding that balance?
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, if you were England even now, like, everyone has to qualify for it, whereas before, it was the top 8 teams. So India and England knew that they're going to be in the World Cup, so they could plan for that World Cup. Whereas we have to, like you said, we have to win games, and that's what was tough about these 3 games, was that ideally we would have had a summer of cricket behind us. So you pick on form, and you're picking guys who are in good nick and stuff like that. But we just had to pick a team that was good enough to win games at the time, and it was almost down to how they were training and how they're working in the nets and stuff. So we will have tough situations, but for selection, but that's what you want. You want players pushing each other. You want the older guys, experienced guys who what you get with them. You want them pushing the young guys, but you also want these young guys coming in and going, I want your spot, and that's what makes it competitive, and that's what keeps all of us looking over our shoulder. And that's what we need. Obviously, it helps if we're playing a lot of provincial cricket and domestic cricket, so that people have form and can find their feet. But yeah, look, it's not going to be easy. I said it last week before the series that if we qualify for this World Cup, it'll be potentially one of Irish cricket's greatest achievements as a team. So it's exciting to have that to look forward to.
That World Cup, of course, is the 50 over format. The T20 format is something that Ireland have improved drastically in the last 3 or 4 years, maybe under the Graham Ford era. You've got potential two World T20s, one in India next year. We were supposed to have the one in Australia this year, which has been postponed. Like, in terms of our growth in T20 cricket, and you can see the likes of Gareth Delaney coming in and hitting freely, is that something that, it's easy to say, oh, it's come from the coaching or whatever, but has it come all the way through the likes of young people playing more and more T20 cricket when they're younger, and it's just coming from there, and they have ability to hit the ball a lot more easier?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the 2021-year-olds have grown up in the 2020 era. I probably caught a bit of it when I was a teenager, but it was still very much 50 over cricket and test cricket. So I think guys coming in, even in one day cricket, you've got to be able to hit the ball hard and clear the ropes. And like I said earlier, we don't have a huge pool of players to pick from, so we don't have these 2020 specialists you can just bring in for T20. So we've got to make sure that we've got players whose game is very adaptable to situations, whether it's T20 cricket or one day cricket. The Caribbean showed that, we've obviously got Kev and Sterlo up the top who have been outstanding, and probably one of the main reasons why we've had that run of form in T20 cricket. So what we've got to do is make sure that the young guys are kind of following suit and going out and playing with that kind of fearless cricket, because like I've said before, we're not as talented as most of these teams when it comes to batting and bowling, but we can go out and try to match them toe for toe and come out with this fearless attitude. That's how we're going to beat these teams regularly.
We spoke earlier about Paul Sterling, but if you talk about Kevin O'Brien for a minute, because he's the most capped Irish sports person of all time. He's got 100 in every format. He's always there for Ireland, the hero of Bangalore, the maestro of Malahide. A couple of words on Kevin. I mean, his longevity and to still be playing and still to be at performing at that higher level.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think he's nearly got. I think he's not far away from 400 caps, and it's outstanding, really, when you think about it. Like, I've played 130 games, and I feel like I've been around for ages, and he's nearly got 400. It's staggering to think about it, but he's got 400. He had a couple of spells where he maybe wasn't doing as well as he wanted to, but when you've played that many games, you can afford that. And to still be he's probably playing some of the best cricket of his life in the last sort of 12, 18 months, since he's got that sort of freedom up the top in T20 cricket. He's such a valuable player to have, and even just to have around the nets for the younger guys and the 20-year-olds who can kind of look at him, and he still trains as hard as any of the guys, and he's itching to be there for as long as possible. And the way he's playing, there's no reason why he can't be thereabouts when we're looking to qualify for the 2023 World Cup.
Sean be a lot bigger cricketer than me. I'd be more of a bandwagon fan. Like we talked before we came on air, watching those last few overs was brilliant. But I'm there shouting at the telly with someone like Kevin O'Brien. It just came into my head there to bring him in straight away. When we needed the runs. Were you tempted at all?
Yeah, I spoke to. I actually mentioned it to Paul when we were out there. I mentioned it to Paul, and he said, "Look, maybe it is something to think about." But I think he then got out, and I just thought it would have been easy to send Kevin, and you're getting with Kev, but also we weren't exactly struggling with the rate. Like, we weren't miles behind where it's like, oh shit, get Kevin in to hit a few sixes. We were still well within the rate. And for someone like Harry, 20 years old, might not play again until January, third game, like the amount he'll learn from 30 not out in that sort of situation is just, it beats anything you can get in the nets or at an Interpro game. So look, it worked out pretty well. The two of them saw us home with a ball to spare, and it was great for Harry particularly to be able to get that experience at such a young age.
I think you touched on a really important point. As much as results, especially for a coach in cricket, as much as results is everything. As a coach, you should be deemed on the improvement in players. So for Andy's improved, Kevin O'Brien's improved as a cricketer, and that improvement that Harry will get, the experience, the confidence he will get is invaluable. And it's something that I think a lot of cricket people don't understand, and we have it in my own club, and I'm always trying to say it to them that you once you can improve your player, your job as a coach is done.
And non-cricket people like myself shouting, coming, watching it for 5 minutes, saying, "Oh, let's go get Kevin O'Brien in." But even you speaking there straight away, I was like, "Great, that's long term." And if we had lost that game by a one run, it's important that we're still saying those things as well as winning. Obviously, we won, so no one's saying it. But, it's important to say that it was the right call, regardless if we won or not, because of the improvement in the players.
Yeah, and look, if we had lost by 1 run, it's me and Paul's fault. It's no one else's fault. We were in the driving seat. Luckily, Jesus, it would have been a long 2 weeks if we had lost that game by a run. But fortunately, we didn't. And you're right. Look, we have to win games. That's the business we're in, is to win games. You know, you can say, you know, we need to give them experience, but if you're losing games, you know, that's an issue. So it is finding a balance, and if we're winning games while also introducing these young guys, and sometimes, you know, we will go back and, you know, if we need an opener, if we need number 4, you know, whoever it is, we have the backup to bring those guys in. But yeah, you do need to find a balance, and it's a tough balance to find. But you know, we did find it last week, even though, you know, those first 2 games, we will have games like that again. But as long as the guys are learning from it and, you know, looking back and seeing how they can better it in the next game, then I think they're doing a good job.
Absolutely, and consistency is probably something that you'll be looking to get. And just, you've been brilliant with your time, Andy. We'll just do a couple of quick fire questions.
No problem.
So one word or as many words as you want. So the toughest opponent you ever played, so the toughest bowler. So we'll go pace bowler and then spin bowler.
Pace bowler was Stuart Broad, not because he was quick, but just because he was thereabouts every ball. And then spin bowler would be Rafi Khan.
The best teammate you ever played with?
Oh God.
And I know there'll be a few listening, so
Can't ask the Irish captain best teammate he's played with, Sean.
Jack Balbirnie.
That's a very good answer. And after his performance last week, it's probably not
Yeah.
a bad one. Your biggest achievement in cricket?
My biggest achievement in cricket would be my Test debut.
Debut. Your goals over the next 5 years?
2023 qualify for the 2023 World Cup and get into the main groups of both T20 World Cups. That's 3 goals, but what you gonna do?
A little bit, just a quick one-liner on cricket as a sport, and how can it grow amongst? I know it's tough. I know Quickfire, but
yeah,
how could cricket grow in terms of coverage here in Ireland? Because I think there is a bit of a fan base like myself that do want to get involved or want to watch a lot more cricket.
Yeah, I think, look, there's so much that could be done. We're competing with some huge sports in the country that I don't know if we'll be able to compete with, just for sheer numbers and that. But my job is to try to produce more stuff like last Wednesday, so that gets people talking and it gets it in the media and it gets it on the television and people want to be involved with stuff like that. That's what I see, you know, as one of the best opportunities for me. Yes, I want to win games and bring up players and integrate new players, but at the end of the day, we're the main ambassadors for our sport. We're the ones that get the coverage. We're the ones that get talked about. So if we can win games and if we can put in performances that make it people proud to watch Irish cricket and follow Irish cricket, then that's the best thing that I think we can do as players to spread our game and hopefully make it become more popular.
Second to last, your favourite ground? So it could be your own Sydney Parade or even Lord's.
Lord's. Favourite ground's Lord's.
And then the last one, we know you're in isolation now, so you've been watching a bit of Netflix. What's the TV series you'd recommend?
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad, a classic.
Yeah, classic.
Listen, Andy, you've been brilliant with your time. I wish you all the best for the future, and we might get you later in the year.
Thanks a million, Andy.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.